Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's the 14th of June, 2024. Today, I want to talk about an immediate and direct threat to the UK from an enemy such as Russia. We previously spoke about missiles probably being one of the most likely forms of attack to the UK mainland, whether launched from submarines, the air, or space. Inbound Russian aircraft are going to be seen coming in from miles away, I'd guess. And I don't have enough information yet on the space deployment of weapons and their technology, so I won't be covering those in this session. However, let's talk about a threat that could be just a few miles off the coast of the UK, and that is submarines. You just don't see much information about them. By nature, they're supposed to remain top secret in terms of locations and operational statuses. They roam the seas of the world and are therefore sort of easily forgotten about, out of sight and out of mind, as they say. Before talking about these submarine vessels and their numbers, just a quick disclaimer to say that the numbers I'm about to present are approximate to within 1 to 4 submarines, because I've pulled in these numbers from 4 or 5 different sources and all of the numbers are different. So because we're never really going to know the enemy's real vessel count, there will be vessels within most fleets being decommissioned, others being upgraded, and of course new vessels out there on sort of test runs across the oceans. However, submarines are a massive and concerning threat to the United Kingdom and many other NATO and or sort of European countries. We also have to be concerned about the potential enemies, who are likely to be Russia, China, and even North Korea. But I've sort of focused mainly on the Russian submarine fleet over the last week, but didn't realize that North Korea has the biggest submarine fleet in the world with approximately 83 submarines, with the Chinese having roughly 74 subs and Russia with around 59 subs. So a total between the three of them of about 219 subs swimming around the seas. Hence the reason for me having this discussion today. But there are points to highlight here, because although those numbers look intimidating, I want to break this threat down to you. All of North Korea's submarines are diesel powered or diesel electric powered, meaning they use diesel engines to keep their batteries running. And the downside to a diesel powered engine is that they have to somehow exhaust their fumes. So this means that although these submarines can stay sort of hidden and submerged, they can only do so for about 48 hours, because they have to sort of surface and release or clear those exhaust fumes. These diesel subs are probably best performing localized sort of defense operations as opposed to missions across the globe. It's believed that North Korea only have 2 SSBNs, or ballistic missile submarines, which aren't nuclear powered. They have around 40 coastal subs, 20 conventional subs, and 21 mini subs. So ideal for local or native duties. So with that, in my view, none of North Korea's submarines are a threat to the UK. Now, that's not to say that they can't or won't want to conduct sort of reconnaissance missions off the coast of England. They're just not likely to, in fear of, I don't know, being detected or taken out. And I'm just not sure what relevance that intelligence would be to them. China has 48 diesel-powered submarines out of a fleet of 74, 12 of which are nuclear-powered subs. So, like the North Korean fleet of diesel-powered subs, we can exclude 48 of those submarines from entering the UK waters. Then we have Russia. Now, Russia, who are supporting 21 diesel-powered subs, and the rest are nuclear-powered out of 60 submarines. So although 219 submarines seems intimidating at first, we have to consider their capabilities, with many submarines across all global fleets also aging and under either repair or upgrading. Still, the threat remains, because Russia still has 37 nuclear-powered submarines. And the key advantage of a nuclear-powered submarine is the ability to stay submerged underwater for months. Of the 37 Russian nuclear vessels, 11 of those are ballistic missile subs. China still has 12 nuclear-powered subs, of which 6 are ballistic missile vessels. Right. I'm going to now talk about the US and the UK's capabilities. So the US has between 64 and 66 submarines, all of which are nuclear powered, and 14 of those are ballistic missile submarines. So no diesel powered submarines at all in their fleet. The UK has 10 nuclear powered submarines, of which 4 are ballistic missile subs. And France, being our closest ally, can sort of present or deploy 12 nuclear powered submarines, with 4 of those being ballistic missile subs. So you can imagine the game of cat and mouse, in the seas around the world with both submarines and surface ships. I've mentioned ballistic missiles a couple of times over the last couple of minutes. So just to put things into perspective, though, a ballistic armed submarine, or boomers as they're known, can carry over 100 nuclear warheads, more powerful than those used in Hiroshima or Nagasaki in Japan. They'll also carry torpedoes that can be fitted with nuclear warheads, giving them, the capability to destroy an enemy harbor or port. If used, the nuclear weapons carried just by one UK Trident submarine could directly cause more than 10 million civilian casualties. And they say the US Ohio class submarine may be the most destructive weapon system created by man. Each of these vessels can carry 24 Trident II submarine launched ballistic missiles, or SLBNs, which can be fired from underwater and strike targets more than 7,000 miles away, depending on the missile payload. So the Trident II missiles, as the Trident II missile re-enters the atmosphere, it does so at speeds of up to Mach 24. Again, let's just put that number into perspective. Mach 24 is around 18,300 miles per hour, so you're just not seeing that missile come. And when this missile re-enters the atmosphere, it kind of splits into up to 8 independent re-entry vehicles, each with either a 100 or a 475 kiloton nuclear warhead. So long story short, a full unload from a Ohio ballistic submarine could unleash up to 192 nuclear warheads to wipe out 24 cities off the face of the planet, and can be launched within 1 minute. So as you can see, we're seeing both sides of the sword here in terms of capabilities and threats presented by submarine classes and their arsenals to, the different levels of defense and deterrent platforms out there sort of protecting our lands. Submarines alone could wipe out most of the major cities across the globe. Without the use of other ground-launched and air-launched capabilities, so an all-out nuclear war, would kind of eventually finish most of us. But we're not talking about that happening right now, as I don't see that sort of event happening in the near future. However, the use of a tactical nuke on a specific counterforce target and possibly countervalue targets is possible and more likely at some point in the near future. So in terms of international maritime rules, the United Kingdom territorial waters is represented by a 12-mile boundary, meaning 12 miles out to sea from the British coastline represents the UK territorial waters. Effectively, this means that an invading force in the form of a submarine that could be sort of sat as close as, I don't know, 13 miles away from the UK mainland. So that means, it could sit. It's not to say it wouldn't be detected, because it would be. It's just that we wouldn't be able to intervene or challenge it until it enters UK territorial waters. So with that in mind, I just wanted to sort of point out the reality of the threat and also how close that submarine threat could be to the UK. And those ballistic missile subs are loaded with ballistic missiles, as well as other surface-to-surface, surface-to-air, and anti-ship missiles ready to strike. In terms of deterrence and the role of some submarines, a navy tends to have ballistic missile capable submarines. and also attack subs which are sort of designed to hunt and destroy enemy nuclear subs. So the Royal Navy's submarine classes are all sort of fitted with state-of-the-art sonar and radar technology, allowing them to, detect enemy vessels from over 50 miles away. And whilst we're on the subject of deterrence, as the UK is an island, we could be attacked from multiple fronts on our coastlines. But there is a deterrent I haven't mentioned sort of yet in any of my videos, and one that most would expect to be in place to a certain degree. Way back in 1956, the Sound Surveillance System, better known as the SOS-US, was created, which was a submarine detection system based on passive sonar developed by the United States Navy, allowing them to track Soviet subs during the Cold War. It's also been known as the Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, or the IUSS, since being upgraded over the last decade or two. And the system comprises of fixed, mobile, and deployable acoustic arrays that provide sort of vital tactical cueing to an ASW force or an anti-submarine warfare force to detect both nuclear and diesel sort of submarines. So the IUSS network uses various different devices along its network to detect sort of submarines and other surface vessels. There are land bases or command and control centers on the coastal lines. There are ocean or seabed sensors. There's ocean bottom seismometers and magnetometers, and underwater vertical hydrophone array systems. There's arrays of transponders and sensors laid on the seabed around the British Isles, monitoring as sort of underwater sonars, sending data from the seabed to surface buoys. Along the surface buoy cable descending to the seabed will be what they call a subsurface float, keeping the kind of cable stretched or tight underwater. And below the subsurface float will be what they call an AUV, or an acoustic underwater vehicle dock. That basically allows the AUV to dock whilst underwater and to unload data to the network. Then down from that is the anchor or sinker holding the buoys in place. On top of that, there are shore facilities with kind of fixed distribution systems going out to sea on these sort of really long cables, both submerged onto the seabed and also sort of floating on the water surface, with various different kind of sonars and sensors attached and listening. And we can't forget about the support ships on the surface, which can sort of deploy an array of submarine detection technologies, such as underwater surveillance based on unmanned systems. A network of UXVs, each one carrying one or more sort of specific payloads and fulfilling a specific mission, communications, collecting data, and also performing sort of real-time monitoring. So USV gateway buoys are used as gateways to sort of transmit data from the UUVs, or unmanned underwater vehicles, back to the ship and then up to satellites if necessary. There will be a seabed rigid sort of network allowing communication between all sea defense and deterrent components, such as components which would include the P-8 Poseidon, which is an RAF maritime patrol aircraft, of which there are 9 in service, with, I believe, a further 3 being commissioned into the service of the RAF soon. These surface ships mentioned in the previous video are the Type 45 Daring class, as well as other sort of Royal Navy frigates used for sort of anti-submarine warfare, as well as anti-submarine helicopters, underwater acoustic monitoring ship, and long-range underwater acoustic communication systems. There's even talk of an underwater preset weapon system, which would sort of consist of components like air-to-air missiles, anti-ship missiles, torpedoes, mines, and also submerged buoy deployment systems. So A large tactical undersea network architecture. So let me just say that again. It's a tactical undersea network architecture, or better known as TUNA, TUNA for short, with equipment and technology to protect our shores. So, although the threat is real, there are countermeasures and systems in place to detect and hunt down these threats, both underwater and on the sea surface. Guys, that's it for this short discussion. You'll be pleased to know, as I just wanted to sort of finish off the threats by missiles to the UK section of this series. However, to continue the threats to the UK, I will be covering EMPs at some point, but we'll do so alongside the video where we'll be sort of talking about nuclear attacks, chemical warfare, radiation, and EMPs. We will be looking at other threats to the UK in the form of cyber attacks as well as other sort of threats, but I will be doing that over the coming weeks, so just look out for those. And that's it from me, guys. I'm off.